All right, folks. Good evening. Professor Finn here, everyone's favorite funeral service educator and homeless mall Santa. Hope everyone is having a good time. Hope none of you folks are suffering the ill impact from the hurricane that blew through here a couple of weeks ago. Houston got hit pretty hard, and my thoughts go out to the Commonwealth Institute, Mr. Cody Lepaski. His school was affected greatly by that. I think they were out without power for about a week. And, if the school's impacted, his students are impacted, and that's never a good thing. So I was told that his power got back on, I think, this past Sunday. So they were out for basically their entire first week of classes. They had no power there at the Institute. So I'm really sorry to hear that. Glad things are back up and running over there. And Commonwealth folks, you got a great school. I hope you're able to get back in gear despite that little hiccup. So, got a bunch of stuff to talk about today, folks. First thing I want to throw out there is this is conference season for our folks at the major institutes. So I think the first one that's coming up is our friends over at the National Funeral Directors and Morticians Association. President Durham is going to be hosting his annual convention, I think, what is that, the week of August 3 to 7th over in Maryland. So the National Funeral Directors and Morticians Association is the largest organization of African American funeral directors in the United States. I have the privilege of knowing several of their past presidents. It's an outstanding organization. They're really engaged at the educational level. They offer scholarships, tons of professional development for their members, I think an NBE review course. So fantastic organization. If you're able to swing by and check out that conference, I strongly recommend it. Next up after that, I believe, is the Cremation Association of North America. They are hosting September 11th to September 13th, and they are in Chicago. So just actually in a meeting today with their executive director, Barbara Kemis. Lovely, lovely person. Pleasure to have her on pleasure to have Kana as a member of the American Board of Funeral Service Education's membership and have her on our executive committee. And she's going to be having that Cremation Association of North America conference about that second week of September. Anything to do with cremation, that's the organization that's leading the charge here in the United States. Considering that cremation is such an important means of disposition here in the United States, strongly encourage you folks to keep in touch with them, be a member of their organization. Great organization. They offer training just like the National Funeral Directors do in regards to cremation arranging and operating a crematory. Check out their program. I think it was the first one of its kind in the United States. I went through that years and years and years ago when literally they were the only one in the United States doing it before anyone else did. And it's a tremendous training. It's great. Last up, the National Funeral Directors Association will be meeting in October. I think that's the 20th to the 23rd. I know for a fact that they have student registrations available. They also have a scholarship through the Funeral Service Foundation. Up to 20 people can win a scholarship to attend the National Funeral Directors Association annual meeting. And it is the de facto largest trade show, I think, in the United States. So if you want to basically see Santa's workshop for funeral directors, that's the place you want to go. And that's going to be in Louisiana. We're going to be in New Orleans. So if you've never been to New Orleans, this is a good way to get your feet wet. Network with a bunch of funeral service practitioners. Check out some of there's got to be 50 to 60 different workshops that are happening during the convention. There's something for everyone. There are tons of people that I know presenting, from professionals to educators. And then you can always stop by the trade show and, hang out with Professor Finn for about 15 minutes and throw some tips into his hat, because I'll be on the trade floor representing the Pierce Mortuary Colleges there with the other campus presidents and deans. If you are an alumni of one of the Pierce schools, please stop by that booth in Louisiana. We always love to connect with our alumni. Come by, see what we're doing there at the colleges, what's being updated, and tell us, what your educational experience was. We always love to hear from alumni folks. So let's dive into a couple of these things that I wanted to get started in chat. I'm gonna go take a peek here in chat real quick. Gathered confessions. SCI just got hit with a lawsuit in California. Here's a quote from the article. The lawsuit alleges that SCI deceptively marketed its products in a variety of ways, including misleading customers. Well, That's not the first time people have accused funeral homes in general of doing something like that. So let's see real quick before I share the screen if I can find that article. That would be interesting. SCI. Found something here over in May. Seems that made all the rounds. I see it on connecting directors. Let's just go right to the state of California. I'm assuming that's going to be the. Yeah, we'll take a peek at that here in a second. The first big discussion that I want to get into is oh, Lee, how are you? It's good to see you on there. I did not do one of these live streams in June, so missed a bunch of you folks. Glad to see you all back. Is the state of New Jersey is proposing an adjustment to their laws. So let's go ahead and get the screen shared. Let me make sure I'm looking at the right one. And you know what? I think I'm going to move myself to the upper right-hand corner for this screen share, just so I don't get into any issues. Let's see what we got here. So this bill modifies regulation of mortuary science and establishes oversight of mortuary and embalming science. Okay. Don't know what the difference between mortuary and embalming science is, but we'll run with it. So I am going to assume that stuff in green is the stuff that they're adding. That just looks like a footnote, and they're adding something. I think when I was paging through this earlier, they are creating something called a funeral arranger. And funeral arranger means a person who practices or engages in funeral directing as defined in this section and is licensed pursuant to the provisions of whatever the provisions are. So let's go see what funeral directing is. Funeral directing means the engaging in or conducting or holding oneself out is being engaged in or conducting the preparation other than embalming for burial or disposition in the direction or supervision of burial or disposal of dead human bodies, or 2, maintaining, using, or operating a mortuary, or 3, in connection with one's name or mortuary using the words mortician or funeral director or undertaker or any other words or title of like import or signification. Funeral directing also means the engaging in or making of or holding oneself as being engaged in or making funeral arrangements, including at-need funeral arrangements or pre-need funeral arrangements, or the offering or holding oneself out as offering the opportunity to purchase or enroll in a prepaid funeral agreement. I do like that because a funeral agreement may or may not be a pre-need arrangement. I wonder if that's out there to stop these memberships in burial societies or something. So I suppose my immediate concern, just kind of looking at this, is why do you need a term like funeral arranger when you have the term funeral director? That just me looking at this, why do you need a third term that encompasses what that already does? That seems redundant. And I'm sure there is some logic, and I've not attended any of the sessions or really dived into this. This came to across my desk earlier this week, and I haven't really dived into it. But I'm just concerned when you create a term that basically is already there, funeral director, like you're a funeral director. And I would think that if you had a funeral director and a funeral arranger, those mean two different things. Like just plain English. Let's forget about legalities here. When the law looks confusing, what the law does is the law jumps to a dictionary and looks at the plain English of the word. So I would probably say that me personally, I don't like having the word funeral arranger as the licensee. I would rather just have it funeral director. It is more universally acceptable. It probably will be easier to transport a license that way to other states that recognize a single purpose licensure. But whatever. So what do we got here? This next section has to do with their state board. 8 members, each of whom shall be a citizen of the United States and a resident state of New Jersey. Well, that's good. At least 4 of whom shall be duly licensed as a practitioner of mortuary science or as a funeral arranger. Okay, practitioner of mortuary science, yo, just say embalmer. Just make your life easy. Like, seriously, just make your life easy. This is not hard. Because, see, this is the problem that I see with well-meaning people. You just said there is mortuary science and embalming science. So if you are in the law stating there are 2 different types of science, then what is mortuary science and what is embalming science? And if it's the same exact thing, then for the love of God, codify it. At least 4 of whom shall be duly licensed practitioner of mortuary science or as a funeral arranger and shall have had a minimum of 5 consecutive years of experience in practice as a practitioner of mortuary science in the state immediately preceding his appointment. Already can tell you there's a faux pas because a funeral arranger will not have 5 years of experience in practice as a practitioner of mortuary science because that is embalming. So already we're running across the fact that the language is getting you in trouble. But again, that's just me, and I'm not the brightest crayon in the box, and certainly missing some McNuggets from my Happy Meal, so what do I know? At least 2 of them will be duly licensed funeral arrangers, except for the members first appointed, of whom 2 shall be in funeral arranging, and of 1 which shall serve for a term of 4 years. Okay, so they're creating a staggered pattern, that's fine. And that's really what the way you want. When you're creating something like a licensing board that has multiple members, you really want the positions to stagger so that any one year you're not replacing like 3/4 of your board. It's like, but every year or so you're replacing 1 or 2. So that's good that they're staggering them out. I suppose what I don't like about the composition is it's forcing you to have 2 arrangers, at least 2. And 2 members who provide service licensed practitioners to mortuary science or licensed funeral arrangers. And I have a problem with that because then you can basically stack your 4 with just funeral arrangers, right? So you're guaranteed to have 2 funeral arrangers, and then you can have 2 that are either practitioners of mortuary science or licensed funeral arrangers. So that means you can have 4 licensed funeral arrangers and the mortuary science people completely shut out. Or of which 1 is licensed and 1 is a licensed funeral arranger. 2... That just seems a little more confusing than it has to be. So I suppose if I have a gripe there, if I'm reading this right, which I may not be, you really should not have the ability to have nothing but 4 funeral arrangers. That's really stacking something, I think, in the wrong direction, where they will only look out for the interest of funeral arrangers. And let's be very honest, the funeral arrangers who will have no training in embalming will have a completely different perspective of what embalming is and how important it is to families. I have long been critical of stuff like that. When people go to a funeral home, they're expecting the licensee behind the desk to have a comprehensive knowledge about anything that happens in there, and we've created the system now where a funeral director may know nothing about embalming, and I think that increases liability because they may be making promises that the embalmer and the firm cannot keep. So I think it becomes really important then, if you're going to have these single-person licensees, that in your continuing education and development, you have a component that trains these folks on an ongoing basis to give them at least the minimums of don't make promises, and when in doubt, refer it to the licensed embalmer so that you're not saying things that you shouldn't be saying. We do teach that no matter what in mortuary schools. So whether you're going to a school for a certificate where you are focusing only on funeral directing, or whether you're taking the traditional mortuary science education or funeral service education, you are finding out that you do not want to be making promises. And if you don't know something, tell people you don't know it and go get the answer. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. I can tell you that absolutely. So yeah, so the practice of mortuary science or funeral arranging, well, if you're going to, now have that diversification, you're going to have to delineate it. So we see that they're throwing that extra term in there an awful lot. No person shall engage in practice more standards of funeral arranging. Yeah. So really, that's just adding that term where you need it. Not really caring about the testing. They're going to test you. If you're going to get a license, you're going to get a test in most of the states. And this is the testing requirement. In case of an applicant for license, a funeral arranger shall have passed an examination to be conducted by the board or an entity other than the board to determine the qualification and fitness of the applicant. This would be a lot easier to say if you just said an examination approved by the board, because then it won't matter who the entity is. The exam itself is approved by the board. So whether it's offered by the board or a third party, and you save yourself reading like an extra half a sentence. Such examination, the scope, character, and content of which shall be determined by the board, shall be the same for all applicants at each examination, and shall include disinfection, hygiene, sanitary science, and bacteriology. So you're testing them on the sciences even though they're arrangers. Okay, legit. That's fine. I would like to know how you expect them to get that education if you're telling them that all they're going to do is arranging. Wow. Like, now I'm getting confused. You're creating a funeral director only license, but then you're creating an examination. Let's be honest. You're wanting to create an alternative to the national board exam. Like, let's just say it. Just say that that's what you're doing, because that's what you're doing. So you want to create your own exam for the state. Hey, knock yourself out. But then you're going to force people to take an exam on disinfection, hygiene, sanitary science, and bacteriology. And then the care and preservation, transportation and burial, cremation, or disposed of dead human bodies. Why do funeral directors need? I mean, what literally is the point of you having a test about preservation if you're going to create a classification of funeral employee that is not engaged in that? The state of Florida does the same exact thing. Their test covers their laws and rules exam covers the entirety of the laws of the state. So a funeral director only candidate who is seeking only that license must know all the laws pertaining to the preservation of dead bodies. What the state of Florida does not do is issue you a test on mortuary science fundamentally to test your knowledge of the preservation of the dead, because that is the realm of the national board exam, and you have to go through an education for that. So this seems it was written by a well-meaning legislator or lobbyist without a real good grasp of what the hell is going on here, which, for the love of God, just get the Florida statute and read it. They've done a pretty good job of hashing this out. I like this. For a license to be a practitioner of mortuary science, God, just call it an embalmer, shall include wherever possible an actual demonstration on a cadaver of the embalming proficiency and qualification of the applicant. So there in New Jersey, I guess you have to do a case in front of a proctor to make sure that you know what you're doing. I'll be jumping up here to chat in a second. For those of you first time here, I do this on the cheap. So when I am in one of these other windows and I am looking at something and scrolling, it disables the chat because the chat is part of the actual broadcasting software. And if you're going to go free, you can't really complain about the fact that, there are these disadvantages. More fluff, just adding funeral arranger everywhere. Yeah, so here we go. This bill amends current law by authorizing the State Board of Mortuary. Why would you put the statement at the bottom? Man, I just gotta laugh. It's like you put the summary at the very bottom after the 14 pages of the paper so that you can't read it. Okay. Unlike practitioners of mortuary science who conduct both funeral directing and embalming, funeral arrangers will not be allowed to embalm but will be proficient in all aspects of funeral directing. Then why the hell are you testing them by this new law on preservation of human bodies? This education includes continuing education. Examination requirements of the law are modified to allow for this new category of licensure. The bill does not change the current requirements for a person. Yep, blah, blah, blah. The funeral directing industry is regulated in large part by the nearly 70-year-old Mortuary Sciences Act from 1952. Prior to the enactment of the 1952 law, the industry was regulated pursuant to something else. Who cares? Under the 1927 law, the licensing board was directed to issue 3 separate licenses, one for embalming, one for funeral directing, and a third one for both embalming and funeral directing. Okay, so go back and take a look at your 1927 law. That seemed to be working, right? The 1952 law consolidated the 3 licenses into one, issuing thereafter a license for a practitioner of mortuary science who must be proficient in both embalming and funeral directing. For religious, cultural, environmental, and other personal and philosophical reasons, individuals often choose cremation or burial without embalming as an alternative to burial with embalming. Over the last several decades, the percentage of funeral services not requiring embalming has increased. Yeah, but the obligation to maintain public health and hygiene has not, and that's where you learn that is in the embalming curriculum largely. This bill, by allowing funeral services not involving embalming to be provided by persons licensed by the board who are not embalmers, would facilitate the response by the funeral services industry to New diverse population and to societal changes. Okay, so basically we're doing this for religious and cultural reasons. Period. We're doing this for religious and cultural reasons. And that's fine. Okay, that's absolutely fine. But when I look at the role of government is intended to maintain a certain standard, needs to do so without influence from religion or philosophical standards. If there is a minimum level of public hygiene that you have to enforce, then that needs to be absolutely the de facto standard for everyone. You can't have a standard for one versus the other. So case in point, when I was teaching at Miami-Dade College, probably about 2016, 2017, I had a rabbi contact me regarding mortuary school. And it was a conservative synagogue, and they objected to embalming. Well, in the state of Florida, when you are preparing a dead body for disposition, that is a protected, licensed activity, and you must have a licensed funeral establishment license in order to perform that act. And the state said, well, hey, you want to do the washing and everything right there at the synagogue, that's fine. But in order to do that, you're going to need to get a funeral director's license, have a funeral director in charge, and have a licensed funeral establishment license. And they're like, well, we shouldn't have to because we're only going to do Jewish whatever. Hey, you're offering your services to the public. And when you are doing these things and you are eliminating a funeral home, that means you're going to be responsible for the death certificate. You're going to be responsible for all the aspects of it. So you are funeral directing, which means you're probably going to have to hire a Gentile funeral director to fill in on the Sabbath when your funeral director can't do something. And also, the Florida law requires that even if you do not have your own storage and embalming facilities, you're not going to offer them, you are required by law to have a contract with a firm that offers that. You can't just go to the state and say, well, we're not going to offer our services to non-Jews. State don't care. State is going to say that there is one standard, everyone's applied to it, and if you're going to do this at your synagogue, which, folks, I am telling you, if churches start doing this and pastors start funeral directing, you might as well just forget about coming into the industry because the churches will take over at some point. I think that is a huge problem, that if you have a licensee that can pick and choose who they want to help and stuff like that, we can have a larger philosophical debate about that. But when you are a licensed establishment, you have to be able to offer services. And it's against the law in the United States to not offer your services, to people of different faiths. It's a violation of the Civil Rights Act. So this then becomes, this really fun round-robin snake eating its own tail as to how you're going to apply this equally without offending someone. So I would just think, man, just literally pull a Florida man. Just say, hey, this is the way we're going to treat it. I'm okay with creating a funeral director only. Like, I'm absolutely okay doing that. Excuse me. But I am not okay with just like jury rigging something like this, where it's, hey, yeah, we're going to test you on human preservation even though you're a ranger. Why? Oh, well, we really didn't think that far. Oopsies. Someone made a mistake. All right, let's get back to the chat and let's catch up. Bros AW and a goat for this. Long live Swiftly 94. Kate and Daniel Bros, love your videos. Thank you. How are you? I am alive. I am overweight, and I have this dinosaurs wearing sombreros and other Latin American ethnic attire. So I'm doing real well. So, folks, if you want me to wear a hat or you want me to wear a relatively unoffensive article of clothing and you want to send something to me to wear for a live stream, that is now a thing. That's how I got this relatively ridiculous shirt that one of my fans, so to speak, sent this in. And I was just kind of like, all right, legit. That's a polo shirt with a tyrannosaur eating a taco, wearing a sombrero. All right, we can go with that. What is about? Again, this is about the wannabe edit to the law in New Jersey. My understanding is this is because of basically imams and probably rabbis wanting to do their burial services in preparation of their dead in their funeral homes, in their either churches or in establishments just for them, but they are prohibited from actually learning, touching dead bodies, embalming, etc. So some of the states will try to find exciting ways to go ahead and accommodate that. Florida just says, hey, licensing is a function of the state, and we're not going to create exceptions for religious reasons. There's a way for you to do it that's already there, and we're not going to reinvent the wheel. So get the license for your whatever, hire the people you need to hire for it, get the contracts you need in place for it, and then you can do anything that you need to do for that. So go for it. Gathered confessions, New Jersey licensed here. There's issues with the burial societies performing funeral activities without a license. That's all I can say about that. Well, shit, that happens in Florida all the time. I mean, we have so many people that play funeral director because they own a funeral home or something. It drives me nuts. And I've told practitioners for years, turn their ass in, right? We went through mortuary school. We took the damn test. We have to do the continuing eds. And when people want to get up there and play funeral director, you get them on the phone, you send the evidence to the state, and you fine their ass. And if they continue to do it, the state needs to come down and shut down their business. It is that simple. Okay? The laws are here to protect the public. By now, probably all of you have seen that stupid video going around of these two clowns that dropped this casket, an oversized casket, at a service. And they're wheeling the casket up, they turn it, and it promptly tips wide over. And you knew what was going to happen. Any person that has been in this industry that knows what they're doing knows that was going to happen. And how did we know that? Because you had about an inch on one side of the bier between the edge of the casket and the bier. So the center of gravity, the weight on that thing, is completely off balance, and all it takes is the smallest amount of pressure for that to shift, and that casket's going to come right off. I mean, you look at it, and you can literally see there's almost 1.5 to 2 foot of space on the far end of the bier. And they're moving it, which means they took absolutely no time and did not even bother to try to make sure that they were placing the bier centered both from head to foot as well as arm to arm. Common sense. It's why we do the stupid thing with the hand where we put it underneath and we see how far back we are, and then we go to the other side and we test that to make sure that it's not at an angle sitting on the bier, and then we go to the head end and we look and we make sure that that casket is positioned dead center as closely as possible so that we do not run the risk of a offset of center of gravity and the casket falling over. Period. That is why we do that. And I would love to know if the people that were walking that casket up to the front were licensees. Or was it someone playing funeral director while the funeral director was parking the car or sitting back watching the staff do what? Because that's something else I see. The funeral director actually doesn't do anything. The funeral director lets the unlicensed staff just go do the job because they're the funeral director and they are too good to touch doorknobs and do the grunt work. Like, come on, man. Here's one thing that happened. Whether licensed or not, the funeral home's going to get sued, and I hope you have your insurance policy up because that family absolutely is going to nail you on a negligence charge. The smartest thing that you would do is just pay whatever they want and walk away from it. Leo's thinking the same thing. All the different names can cause some obstacles when trying to navigate the legal aspects. Yeah, a lot of states are not thinking about reciprocity or endorsement of other licenses. They're trying to focus on their little own thing, and then larger organizations, especially places like the National Funeral Directors Association, the National Funeral Directors and Morticians Associations, they get dragged into these legislative issues because, like, well, why doesn't this work? Because literally you're focusing on your own little sandbox and no one else's, and then when that happens, you wonder why nothing works because no one is playing nice with other states. Dude, it's crazy out there. It is crazy out there. And I can tell you as president of the American Board that we'll get questions delivered to us from other organizations or state organizations. And it's like, this is why you as state regulators need to talk to these other state regulators and come to some common agreements. Like, if all of you just literally sat down at a friggin' table and talked it out, you could come up with a solution. But if you don't want to sit down at the table and talk, and you just want to say someone else needs to do it, well, here's a damn hint. No one's going to do it. Okay? No one is going to do it because the people you're trying to engage to do it are just going to come back and say, well, here's what you need to do. And then you're going to say, well, we can't do it that way. Figure something else out. No, you folks need to put in the damn work. It's a group project. It literally is a group project. This is why when you went into college and you got your master's in political science and then went to law school and went into public life, this is why you had group projects, so that you could figure these damn things out without delegating it to someone else. New Jersey is famous for making law complicated and ridiculous. I'm from Massachusetts. That's literally the entire northeastern United States. Like, all of them have nothing better to do than to create complicated, boring, and really hard to read law. Lee, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, it's always broke. It's always broke. That's the issue, because someone always wants something. Why do you think we have single-purpose licensees? Because ultimately, someone wanted cheap employees. Period. We don't want to have to send people to mortuary school. Let's just go ahead and get them up and running and pay them less because we can. But we won't make them managers because there has to be some relevance for us actually getting a traditional mortuary education and actually knowing everything there is to know about the subject. You know what? There is such a shortage of personnel. Maybe they can be managers, but only places without a prep room. Then how friggin' long is it going to be before even a prep room's not going to matter? Well, embalming's on the decline, so we really don't have to worry about that. Dude, it is a slippery slope. And we as practitioners, go back and read that damn history book, The History of American Funeral Directing. Forget the first, 8 chapters. Start it, through the Ice Age into embalming. I think that's, chapter 8 or chapter 9. And read from there and go to the next chapter, the associational movement, where it talks about how we as professionals came together to establish commonality, educational standards, and then that progressed from the late 1800s into the 1940s. We fought for that, and now literally we're letting people crap all over that, an entire century of improvement, and they're rewinding the clock back to anyone who wants to put a damn shingle on the front door and say, hey, I'm a funeral director now. Okay, cool. Must be nice. I'm a little hot about it, as you can tell. This drives me nuts. This literally drives me nuts. And the reason why it drives me nuts, especially now in my new position as the chief executive of Pierce Colleges, is because people pay money to go to mortuary school. They work damn hard to get the education. They kick their ass. They sacrifice time with their friends and families. They pass a board examination. And then you have states like this crapping all over that and just saying, well, we're going to create a new class that maybe you don't need to do all of that. Then what is the purpose of having mortuary school? Ultimately, what is the purpose? The purpose is so that we have a defined national standard. This is why it is very important that even when you're changing things like this, they need to be graduates of an American board accredited school so that we know that they are receiving the same exact type of education. If you go back and if you go to law school, you're going to see that there was a time and place in the United States where you could have 2 different legal standards. If you went to law school in a modern urban environment, New York, Boston, etc., then, it was medicine. It was medicine. If you went to one of these highfalutin medical schools, then you had a different standard of care than one of these country bumpkin doctors who kind of was just a sawbones. And then what happened is medical schools consolidated. Medical schools got together and they created a uniform curriculum. They created the MCATs, and then the law updated because there was a uniform standard throughout the United States. And we take for granted that is the way it is in the United States right now. That if you go to an ABFSC accredited school, that school is meeting the minimum standards for accreditation, and that means the education they are providing is as good as any other accredited school from the eyes of accreditation. Whether you're getting an equal educational experience, I see plenty of stuff on social media where people chew up their mortuary schools. I know virtually all the single-purpose presidents in the United States, whether it's Lily McMurray at Warsham, or Dr. Barry Lease over at PIMS, or Doug Simber up at American Academy McAllister, or Jack Lechner at Cincinnati. I've met all these folks, right? And the one thing I can tell you is they all have great schools. Every dang one of them has a great school. And some of these folks I'm closer with than others, Plain and simple. I have preferences because some of these folks literally are my close acquaintances and even friends. And when someone slams one of the other schools, like, oh, that school has a crap education. No, they don't. No, they don't. I know they don't. I know these people. I know the passion they have for funeral service. I know the people they hire to run their schools. I know the way they run their schools and the support systems they offer. There is something there that happened that prevented you from getting that full experience. And that's regrettable because I know the effort that goes into these single-purpose schools. Like, I have a whole new perspective since I went from a public institution, multidisciplinary, to a single-purpose mortuary school. It completely changed the way I view some of these things. And it is not as much of a sweet job running one of those schools as some people may think. It's not a country club job. It's crazy. Johnny, hello from San Francisco Bay Area. Hell yeah, man. How's California? I was on the phone with my friend at Cypress College, the wonderful and brilliant Jolina Grande, the head of the program there at Cypress College, in a meeting earlier today. And I got a lot of friends in California still. A lot of friends. I got a buddy of mine who's an actor out there. His name is Chris Pardall. I'll tell you folks what, I'm going to throw a shout out for him. If you want to see one of his... So I've known Chris since junior college. So basically, I graduated high school and I went to the local junior college. And that's where I first met Chris. And Chris did a movie. And, oh my God, what was the name of that movie? I can't remember it right now. I'll have to look it back up. But Chris did a movie, and Rutger Hauer was in it. A bunch of other people, like aging actors, but people that I grew up watching in the 80s and the 90s. And I was just sitting there like, dude, you literally got Corbin Nash. That's the name of it. I'll drop it in chat. Corbin Nash. If you want to drop some cash and throw some money his way for the movie, check it out. He got to act with a bunch of people that I grew up watching. It's kind of like a dream come true when you finally get to meet your idols. So I watched the movie. Not a bad flick. If you go into it thinking it's Lord of the Rings, it's not Lord of the Rings. But, you know, I just found it to be something different. So if you want to check it out, check it out. But, you know, shout out to all my folks there on the West Coast. I don't visit as often as I should. I stand behind our required education. Hell yeah. Yeah, and I do as well. And I preach that at every second, that if you're trying to create a system by apprenticeship, you don't want to create a system by apprenticeship. I had a situation where someone stated that, you know, the standard for embalming is 1 gallon for every 50 pounds. And I'm like, dude, that hasn't been the standard since the 80s. Period. That has not been the standard. And that is not what is taught in modern curriculums since the entire time I have been in education, which is 2012. It is a reference in those books. It is a throwback to the previous system of body typing, and that came from a book by Ray Slocum that's even referenced in the 5th and maybe the 6th edition of the current embalming book. I got it on my shelf right here. But that standard is based on no matter which body you get, literally it is 1 gallon for every 50 pounds. And that is not the standard. The modern standard is the body has to tell you what conditions are there, and you have to get good at interpreting what you're seeing. This is what makes embalming curriculum so hard, is everyone wants black and white rules that you can apply, and in modern embalming, the best you can do is guesstimates. This is why you study the diseases. This is why you study the outcomes of those diseases. So when you're looking at the case, you can formulate in your mind how you should approach this. Now, the moral of the story, the simplification of this, there's only 2 possible solutions to every case that's out there. You either increase concentration with same quantity, or you increase concentration with a lower quantity, because you're afraid that things are going to swell. And then you inject as frequently as you need to, and in conjunction with, or at least in sequence, as often as you need to, until you get the situation under control. But you can't just look at a body and go, up, 200 pounds, that's going to be 4 gallons. No, you might not be able to put 4 gallons into that, depending on what the condition of that body is. So you may only be able to put in 2.5 gallons. And if you do, you're going to have to modify your concentration accordingly, because you don't. I mean, if you have complications, with every dang body these days has complications because the drugs are keeping them alive longer. So you have to keep those things into consideration. So a 50 pound or 50 pounds to a gallon standard has not been, and probably will never be again, unless society collapses and we get off of pharmaceuticals, the standard that we will ever use for when we approach embalming. All good, brother. Thanks for your info. Enjoy your videos. Glad to hear it. Monica, hey, how you doing, sweetheart? It's been a while. Love seeing your posts on Facebook, man. You're living your best life down there. If I didn't know better, I think you're establishing you're establishing your social media brand. Just saying. Just saying. So the other thing I got for you folks today, as we're diving through here, is, let's close that. The Memorial Business Journal. So one of the advantages, it sounds like I'm hawking people. I promise I am not getting a kickback from the NFDA or any of the organizations. I am not sponsored by them. I don't get anything from them. One of the benefits of the NFDA is the Memorial Business Journal. If you folks get a membership with NFDA, which your firms can buy membership for the firm, and every licensed funeral director gets covered by it. They have these group memberships. You get the Memorial Business Journal. And what's really nice about our I don't want to say a partnership, but our relationship with the National Funeral Directors Association is key things that come out when the American Board polls at schools, NFDA tells people. So in this July 11th edition of the Memorial Business Journal, the first thing up here is Funeral Service Education Program sees spike in 2023 graduates. So there's a couple reasons for that before we even look at what they're publishing. And that is 2023, this is basically the closeout of all the people that started this during COVID. Okay? There was this massive rush into the schools for people to get into mortuary science. And now, largely, that wave has crested, and it is breaking. And so we're probably going to see a decline in enrollment for the next couple of years. And everything is cyclical. Okay? Everything here is cyclical. So this article talks about that, but the reason why I want to bring this up is because what they did, and every year the American Board of Funeral Service Education requires its programs to submit an annual report. They have to report on certain metrics, and then the American Board office compiles that, into a summary report, which it sends out to stakeholders, including NFDA, and publishes on their website. So if you have not ever visited the American Board website, www.abfse.org, there's a little bit of something for everyone. So if you're interested in mortuary science for students, you can look up programs for educators. There's also a bunch of stuff here. Anything you would want to know, okay? But we publish information on this website. We publish our data on this website. And one of the cool things that NFDA does is they also keep track of some of these metrics. So we can see back in 1975, we had about 2,400 new students and about 1,800 graduates. Here we are in 2023, and we've only basically increased by about 600 new students per year. And we're graduating roughly, about maybe, about 60 more. About 60 more. So there's a couple things here. The first is the education has changed a hell of a lot, folks, since 1975. Do not delude yourselves. The education has changed a hell of a lot since 2006, 2007, when I was in mortuary school. Okay? The way people are assessed is completely different than the way it was when I was in mortuary school. And so some of you folks, like my graduates, give yourself another 5 or 6 years and mortuary school is going to be completely changed again. Okay? And those of you folks with bachelor's degrees, this is a great time if you want to get involved in mortuary science education. If you've got a bachelor's degree, you want to teach, there's probably going to be a school that could probably use you either in a face-to-face environment or in a distance ed environment. And then you can actually see these trends as they are occurring. So there are some issues, okay? There are some issues with attrition. Okay, we know attrition is an issue. And having been an individual that did a survey on this, how you define things and how people interpret them is a major, major issue here. So what we see is what happened in 2023. Remained in funeral service related major but transferred to another institution. Very, very small amount. Very, very small amount. Changed major to a non-accredited program. They just gave up on mortuary science. About 2%. Gave out 2%. Changed major but remained in higher ed. 35%. So what this means is they were part of so this first one at 20, what this means is they started in a traditional mortuary science environment, and then they chose to step back and maybe take a funeral director only certificate rather than a combined education. The next one, those are the ones that gave up on mortuary science. So roughly about 4% of students who enter into a mortuary science education walk away from mortuary science completely not for them. Now, the reasons for that could either be related to the curriculum, because it's not easy and people find that out after the fact, despite a lot of schools as well as people like myself saying, dude, if you think you're going to come to mortuary school and just kind of coach through it, you are deluding yourself. Or it could be because of the business itself. They start strong in mortuary and funeral service education. They love what they're doing. They start working at a funeral home. Then they realize the job is hard. Right? The job is hard. And the job is hard, especially when you have not a lot of staff. As much as there are these great stories of people that are fully licensed professionals have these Cinderella jobs, the vast majority of people with a license do not. So they realize it's not for them. And this does not differentiate whether it's an educational issue or whether it's because of other external factors. This is dispositive, though. Left for academic reasons. Understand, that means they could not do mortuary school. 37% of people who come to mortuary school leave because it's too hard. And that's the truth. That's what this number says. 76 left for financial reasons. Whether it's their student aid got exhausted or whether they're paying out of pocket and something changed. And finally, left for personal reasons, 387. 43%. So when you add up the people that are leaving because something is interfering with their education, which is the personal reasons, and you add up the people who can't handle mortuary school academically, you are literally looking at 80%. 8 out of 10 people leave mortuary school because either it is too hard or there are things that are interfering and they can't do it right now, which generally is sickness in the family, have to work, things like that. There are other reasons, which is also a very small percent. That is very powerful. That is very powerful. 80% have to leave because either it's too hard or there are things interfering. And here's the thing. Mortuary schools can't change either of those. That is an important distinction. Mortuary schools cannot make things easier. Okay? They are trying their hardest to make the education more accessible. They're trying to find the best people to give you the best education. They're trying to find other ways to deliver the education to you. But if you can't handle it, you can't handle it. And there is virtually nothing we can do about personal reasons when there are these things that are interfering with your life where you're coming to school. And we already know, folks, that the preferred modality for people coming to mortuary school is online learning. Okay, we already know that. So even in online learning where you can do it yourself, they have to leave for personal reasons. And here's a hint. The academic reasons is probably also related to the distance education. I'm a product of an online mortuary school. It kicked my ass. It kicked my ass hard. So those of you who are my students that are listening, I was hard, but I was fair. Okay? I tried to be fair as best as I could, but I had to set a standard because I know what it's like to go to get out there and then go to take that test. Imagine if you didn't have me and you had to teach yourself. It becomes infinitely harder. Infinitely harder. And so I think this rise in distance education is also driving this number. Okay, it's also driving this number to where we see it today, where nearly 80% of people are leaving for academic or personal reasons. I'm not going to get into what they're saying. I just want to kind of look at the charts. This is what I tell you, folks. Okay, for those of you who are in mortuary school, getting ready to do your boards, there's a reason why I tell you, folks, you need to be outlining your information. You don't have time to read books at this point. There's too much data. What you need to do is look at charts. You look at outlines. Why? Because that's good. That's giving you the boost that you need to kind of pull that information out of your subconscious. And if you can't find what's there, you don't know what something is referencing, that's when you go in the book to look at it. This is why charts are important. So who do we have here? We have ethnic and genders. So we see that 64% are Caucasian, about 18% are African American. Hispanic is right after that. So this is kind of just the demographic of the United States. We're seeing basically a normal national mix. We're not seeing anything that is going like, what the hell is going on here? So this seems to be about right. But look at the genders. Look at the genders of new enrollees. Women are outpacing Caucasian males at nearly 3-1. That's powerful. That is powerful. That is an important number. And let's look at the rest of it. African American, nearly 2-1 as well. Hispanic, 3-1. Native American, almost 5-1. What we see here, folks, absolutely, this is going to be a women's business. This is absolutely going to be a women's business. But we've known that. We've known that because that statistic has been increasing for years now. So the age groups, this is the fun part. When people say, oh, I love teaching my kids. Bro, they're not kids anymore. 21 to 25, you're legally capable of carrying a firearm, dying for your country, and drinking and voting. 20 and under, the traditional types, the ones fresh out of high school. Not the majority. So when you look at this, and we add up basically from 20 to 35, 30, you're looking at nearly 60%. 60% of all new enrollees are between the ages of 21 and 35. They're not children. Remember we just talked about the leaving for personal reasons? Because they're between the ages of 21 and 35. They're having their families. They're working. They're trying to save up for a house. This is why statistics matter. This is why you need to learn to interpret things. You can make inferences, right? I don't know for sure, but if you look at the age group, 21 to 35, what are they suffering with right now? They can barely afford to live. They're living in their mom and dad. They're living longer than they're not having children, or if they are having children, they have it very hard. All that bleeds into this. By far, we're looking at high school graduates. That's not surprising. And high school or equivalent, new enrollees, high school or equivalents. That's your traditional types. Only 25% of all new enrollees are either coming to us with high school diplomas or, if they're older learners, GEDs. The vast majority are coming with some level of college. But what's scary? What's scary about this? They never completed degrees. Look at these numbers. 20, 26, 6.9. 50% of people applying to mortuary school went to college but never finished their degree, basically. We know that because if they had a degree, they'd be under bachelor's degrees. Very small percentage of master's degrees. So those are your second and third career types. And then the others are probably either doctorate or international. Doctorate or international. Isn't that nuts? Isn't that nuts? Also dispositive. Less than 6 months experience. 527. Less than half of all people coming to mortuary school actually have some experience. That plays a huge part of retention. They're coming to mortuary school because it's cool, because they watch Caitlin Doty or Carrie the Mortician or whoever on YouTube and like, oh my God, this is going to be such a phenomenal job. Job's hard. You're warned. Look at that. 12%. Only 12% of all new enrollees have someone that is involved in funeral service. That means everyone else coming in, first gen. They're going to be the first gen. Just like me. I was a first gen. There's no one in my family, either in America or in Sicily, that is a funeral director. I am the only one. These are scary statistics when you realize what's going on here. Because the people who are in funeral business, their kids aren't coming. Their brothers and sisters aren't coming. That tells you something. I'm not going to get into the graduates by state. I'm just going to say the great state of Texas is kind of crazy right on top there. Texas has a lot of people. But Texas is also a huge state. So if you folks want this, again, there are these statistics, I think, published for the general good on the American Board website. But also, stuff like this gets published all the time in the Memorial Business Journal, or it might even make it into the Director or Memento Mori. Sometimes stuff like that actually gets published in their education edition or something like that. So it's there for if you want to look at it. Gather Confessions. What are your thoughts on terramation? Hey, man. To each their own. Am I going to compost? Probably not. But what I will tell you that one of the organizations leading the charge in that is the Cremation Association of North America. Many states are not approving composting by themselves. So what they're doing is they're including composting under their legal definition of cremation. And part of the discussion that I had with Barbara Kemmis, the executive director of CANA today, was about that they're having to offer these trainings because there are states that require certifications in cremation in order to practice cremation. And when you loop in something like hydrolysis or natural organic reduction, right? Terramation, its generic term is natural organic reduction, NOR. They have to have a cremation certification in order to be able to perform NOR. So CANA found itself in the situation where, well, crap, we need to add this to a training or have a training on this because in that state it falls under cremation. So I'm not here to debate the wisdom of including these things under cremation because me personally, I think that is legally stupid. Like, just change your damn law. And here's a hint. If you're worried that your people won't approve it, you should probably worry more about why that is. And address that at its fundamental base. But I mean, I get it. I can see people just going, oh my God, this sort of thing, you're just grinding people up, and that's against what the good Lord wanted. Mm-hmm. Yep. Because those religions back then, they wrapped you in a sheet and they put you in the ground, and they wanted your body to go back to the earth as quickly as possible. So clearly They didn't want to do composting. Yeah. It's not like you have to use an all-wood container, so it breaks down quickly. That's not composting. Yeah. Certainly the good Lord wouldn't want that. I stated earlier I had like a sarcasm biscuit for breakfast because, man, I've just been on a roll today. Like, seriously, I've been on a roll. Outlining is one of the best things you can do. Yeah, outlining is probably the most important skill that you can learn as a student, because it just takes everything down to one sentence, one keyword. And then when you're looking at it, you can just look at the keywords and realize which one you need to brush up on rather than reading pages and pages and pages. Like, that's what killed me my first year in law school, is I tried to do it a non-mortuary school way. I tried to cut corners, just read it and, highlight in the book. Didn't work. When I started outlining, that's when it started to work, when I started actually putting in the time. So, Attorney General Bonta announces Service Corporation National's nation's largest funeral service provider to pay $23 million penalty. Dude, $23 million? That's basically asking SCI for a cup of coffee. $23 million ain't squat. That's pretty light. I love how what I am now referring to as the peasant class, we see as peasants $23 million. Oh, that's a lot of money, bro. $23 million to the largest funeral provider in the United States. $23 million hurts. Don't take me wrong. It's going to catch their attention. That's not an exorbitant amount of money. There's business Neptune Society and Trident Society. They're naming Neptune. When are people going to learn? Like, seriously, when are people going to learn? Do not offer the damn membership. Just sell them a freaking pre-need and get over it. That is my beef with Neptune, is when they came into Florida and the SEI started branding certain firms there as Neptune Society, they offer a membership in their network. For the love of God, stop doing it. I mean, forget the fact that maybe you're making some money on it. The bad press isn't worth it. Violated the unfair competition law and false advertising law by engaging in false advertising and lawful and deceptive acts. I would love to see what they were doing that triggered that. Yeah, so there it is. They expect and law requires their funds to be safe and protected until the services are utilized. It's the friggin' membership. Because if it's a membership, you don't have to put it in a trust. You don't have to put it in a policy because it's a membership. Like, when are they going to learn, don't use the damn membership? Like, Jesus. I'm not even going to read the rest of this because I know exactly that's the issue with it. Legit, that's the issue with it. Oh, my God. I literally hate people. I hate people because they just cannot learn. So I did get some emails. I did get some emails with some questions to address during the live stream. So that'll be the next thing. So the good part is here now, chat, that I can sit here and I can literally look at the chat as I'm working. Oh, cool new toy, right? So I've had an eBay account for years. I've had an eBay account for years and years and years and years. And I always have like little keywords that I just leave on there in case something cool pops up. So I found an embalming kit. And it wasn't a buy it now because if it was, I would have just bought it. But it was a traditional auction, and I lost it. And I was like, yeah, well, I'm glad you got the money for that because I ain't gonna spend that. And then a couple days later, I thought someone spoofed the listing and just uploaded like a new picture trying to like screw people out of it. And the guy that won the auction didn't pay. So the second thing I love non-paying bidders. Because usually when people see something pop back up, maybe they bid on it, maybe they don't. Hey, we'll see. So moral of the story is it went back up there and no one basically noticed it went back up. It was like me and one other person. And the bidding ended. And I thought this was so cool. I'll put it up to the camera for y'all. So check this out. I haven't seen something like this. Right? So I've seen these kits before. Like if you just do an embalming kit on eBay, that you're going to find one of these. But what I have never seen in any way, shape, or form is one of these kits where legit They brass plated it. They brass plated it. And I just thought that was the coolest thing that I've seen in a while. So I managed to get this. And if I'm being honest, did I overpay for stuff? Probably not. Shipped to me, it was probably just about just under $250, I think. I won it for $202.50, and I had to pay shipping on it for like $20. It was like $225. And if I price this stuff out at any one of the major chemical corporations, I'm probably looking specifically at just under $200 for each one of the instruments by themselves. But what's really nuts, even the suture needles are brassed. And I was just like, all right, yeah. For those of you that had me in class, you know Professor Finn loves his bling. So yeah, I was very happy to get this. And for people right now that are probably losing their freaking minds because they don't know better, yes, the first thing that I did is I went ahead and sterilized this. And even something with a finish like this, folks, best thing you can use to clean it, Dawn dishwashing detergent, hot water. Dawn will break down the fats on the outsides of the microorganisms that are hard to kill. And once that fat layer is gone, they're capable of being beat up by anything else. So simply putting them in hot water, rinsing, soaking them in some soapy hot water, rinsing them off, cleaning them off again, letting them air dry. Not the same as putting in glutaraldehyde, but I don't know I want to put that into a cold sterilant solution because I do not know if that's going to react with the cold sterilant. So I just went the cheapy route with Dawn dishwashing detergent. Gather Confession, thanks so much for what you do here. Hey, appreciate it. That's why I do it. Literally, folks, I love doing these. I'm sorry I couldn't do one for June, or I missed a month. I think I missed May. I missed May because I did one for June because that's when I talked about my dad's funeral. Oh my God, your shirt, awesome. Yeah, dude, I love this shirt. Again, if you folks want me to wear some silly, stupid shirt or some stupid hat, you're more than welcome to send me askbigbadfinn@gmail.com. Or you can just ship it to my attention at the Dallas Institute of Funeral Service, and they'll let me know there's something there for pickup. So this comes from Lisa. Hey, Professor Finn, I'm sure you're aware that Florida EDRS system was hacked. Yeah. Here's a hint. Password 1234 is not a strong password. Shocker. It's been a complete shit show since that happened. Yeah, I know. I've literally had former students call me and talk to me about their situation, and I feel horrible for you folks. Paperwork is labor intensive, and doctor signing a DC in 72 hours is not happening, which is pathetic because the entirety of my career we did paper death certificates and still had to have that crap in 3 days. So what it is now the doctors just don't want to actually have to sit there and sign something. They just want to be able to have like a nurse push a button. So that's a thing. Bodies are piling up at the crematories because it's taking so long to get a doctor to sign. Yeah, no, isn't it great? And there's another 24 to 48 hours to get medical examiner approval, which back in the day you could get via fax. So I don't know if I don't know who the District 6 ME is over there. Used to be a guy by the name of Thogmartin. Maybe they've adjusted their policies and got rid of their fax number as a result because, hey, no one's faxing these things anymore. It's all coming via EDRS. And yeah, without the DCs, you're kind of screwed, man. No insurance, no nothing. The DCs that we do get look like something homemade, which is great because, you know, my dad just died a couple of months ago, and my death certificates look really nice and professional. And this is why I bought more than I needed, so that I don't need to worry about buying more. And I'm glad I did at this point, because I'm like, I could not imagine the shit show if I needed to get one of these. Some of the information is written while some is typed. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. And you don't want to know why? Because no one has the death certificate templates anymore, so you can't just print them off your computer. No one has typewriters anymore because they got rid of them because EDRS. Bro, I still have my Selectric. I still have my little brother sitting in my dad's house. This is why you keep typewriters. You know, I don't feel bad. I love it. I picked up some short form DCs that aren't supposed to have the full Social Security number on. Someone at Vitals literally took a pen and crossed through the first 5 numbers. Yeah. Redaction by Sharpie. Fun fact, when they first went to the short forms, Okay, people didn't know the short form existed, so they'd go and they would just buy long form death certificates, and courts wouldn't take them because they weren't allowed to publish the classified medical record portion as part of the public record. So the state actually had to change its law and allow agents of the court to take a permanent marker and black out the sensitive information because people were coming to court with the wrong death certificate, holding the courts up. And finally, when the judges are too inconvenienced, they're going to do something about that. They did something about it and let you use Sharpies to fix that crap. Anyone can see the whole story. It was just ridiculous. I look forward to the live. Oh, there's that. So, yeah, I feel you. It's a complete circus. So the first thing is, I have not kept up with it, so I don't know how the ransomware intrusion occurred. Okay, I don't know how that happened. I know that someone's probably going to get fired over that crap because, if you're the reason why the intrusion happened, that's on you, man. That is on you. Dawn is my hero. Yeah, Dawn is the best stuff ever. Like, for your prep room gear, you should only use Dawn on any of your plastics because the Lysol wipes, the Lysol sprays, they melt the plastic. It's why it gets cloudy. It's why I taught that to you folks when I finally figured out why that was happening. It's why in all my embalming labs I told you folks, hey man, just use Dawn dishwashing detergent, hot water. Let it air dry. Problem solved. Where do I teach at? I'm not teaching anymore. I am not teaching anymore. I used to teach at Miami-Dade, SUNY Canton, Arkansas State University, Mountain Home. I mean, I was teaching everywhere. I was one of the running jokes in the American board that I was teaching at so many places. So nowadays, I am not actively teaching. I may pick up a class or two here in the future, likely through the Dallas Institute of Funeral Service. I may teach an embalming class or something like that online. But right now, I am not actively teaching. Literally, the job I have keeps me busy enough. Like, if I had to teach on top of it, I'd be losing my mind. Thank you. It's been really been messing with my funeral home going back to paper. Ship outs and cremations are piling up. The older FDs don't remember how it used to be with paper. Dude, just get yourself a typewriter. Problem is solved. I had my brother all set up, literally. Cheap crap 1990s Brother electric typewriter. Little portable one with the little plastic lid you could pop off so you could use it on battery, use it via the wall plug. And I paginated the thing so that I could put the paper DC exactly where I needed it, press the button, and after I type something and hit enter, it would go immediately to my next field. Legit had this thing down to a science. And even when they're like, oh, we're going to computer, I'm like, computers fail. Computers fail. Tomorrow I get to hang out with my godson and his dad. Why? Because they're stuck in DFW. Why? Because Microsoft Windows went down and all the airlines went to shit. I was just seeing that a friend of mine from junior college, Christy, she's on vacation right now. She was flying out to see some band, and she got screwed with all the flight changes. And people wonder why I don't like flying. Like, if I have a choice, I will rent a car and I will drive there so that if this happens, hey man, guess what? Unless I can't rent the car, doesn't affect me. And I'm not saying the rental car agencies don't go down, but if I can't rent the car, guess what? I'll take my car. I don't like putting that type of mileage on my car if I have to drive long distances, but by damn it, I'll do it. Absolutely. And then I'll, get my mileage reimbursed. But I would prefer just to rent and trash someone else's car in the process. I know, it's great, right? Capitalism, baby. Why the hell do we even have my my earbuds in? It's not like I have a voice chat going on my Discord, which, by the way, folks, that's coming. I know you can't see it, but the office is actually not in a complete state of disrepair. I actually finally got everything where it needs to. The mixing board's over there. I got the switcher I need for video inputs, which means I'm going to follow through with some of that stuff I talked about last time. Maybe doing some game live streaming and stuff like that for some of you gamers out there. If you want to jump on in with Professor Finn, that'll be something that I'm probably going to start testing out next week because all the stuff that's coming in. Tell you what, for you gamer nerds out there, if you've been looking to take the dive into the old Steam Deck or anything like that, Best Buy's got this clearance event right now. And again, I'm not sponsored by any of these clowns, but they have the Asus Ally Z1 Extreme. Usually it's about $6.99 on sale for a competition for Prime Day for $5.49. They have the Z1 Extremes on sale, fair condition, if there's any in your area, at $385. So basically you're getting something that by all accounts is better than a Steam Deck, runs all of that, whether it's Xbox Cloud Gaming, Steam Store, you name it. You can get it for just under $400. And I was like, hey, you know what? This is going to really make my life easier doing some of this stuff than trying to set up a whole new rig over here. Just buy one of those, put it on the dock, and leave it. So I got a little slush fund that every paycheck I put like 50, 60 bucks into. And I had enough to cover one of those. So I set up I purchased one. The other cool thing about the Rogue Ally, or the Asus Ally, it's a Windows-based device. So the other thing that I did is I installed my email. So if I am traveling and I don't need my laptop, I just need to be able to communicate with my staff and check emails and whatnot. I got all that on there, portable keyboard and a mouse. And the 7-inch screen is just good enough for me to do whatever I might need to do on it. And if that's not good enough, I can plug into my hotel's TV with the USB-C to HDMI. And then I've got, whatever size monitor that is. I go somewhere else, I can do the same exact thing. Plug right into the HDMI from the device. So I'm not saying it's nearly as good as a full-fledged laptop, but if I want to take my laptop, I can just throw a little gaming device in there and I'm on my way, which for me, that's pretty good. So this comes in from Linkshade. Hello, Mr. Finn. This is a push for bachelor's, or there is a push for bachelor's degrees, which are bachelor's in funeral service or something near to that. On several locations, I shall not infuse too much of my personal opinions or experience in this missive, but I'm composing a few things to consider. So in regards to a bachelor's, the problem we run in with bachelor's is if you look at the public schools, okay, so the ones that are basically regionally accredited, very few of them actually have a regionally accredited bachelor's degree. Now, I'm not saying all the schools don't have one of these. So I think the Cincinnati College of Mortuary Science is regionally accredited. Maybe AAMI is. I can't remember. Some of these single-purpose schools are regionally accredited, and they have a bachelor's degree. So that's awesome. Okay? That's awesome. The other schools are repurposing a bachelor's degree in an allied field, and your funeral service degree is portable into that. So they'll accept all or the majority of credits in some sort of like allied health management degree or something like that. I am telling you that if you're going to go that route for a bachelor's degree, your best bet is to get a bachelor's degree in funeral service that is also regionally accredited. I know that's going to narrow down a lot of the possibilities. But fact of the matter is, I think you're going to see schools focusing on these bachelor's degrees in the next couple of years, including schools getting regionally accredited even, in order to effectively offer these type of degrees. What do you think of a ban on instructors using AI to grade students? So I don't believe in bans on AI. From a institutional standpoint, every institution needs to have an official stance on how AI is to be used in the classroom. So, for instance, me personally, I do not want you using Grammarly. I do not want you using any AI whatsoever. You need to be able to read and write. Plain and simple. You need to be able to read and write. I am too old school for you to sit there and just do something on Grammarly. Get better at what you're supposed to be doing. And I know that's probably really harsh. I'm going to alienate, the younger generation from me. Dude, I don't care. Like, what happens when Grammarly goes down? You're going to look like an idiot writing an email. Plain and simple. You cannot think and compose on your own. You are reliant on the AI crutch. I do not like it. What do I think about instructors using AI to grade students? It is a viable tool. Well, isn't that a bit hypocritical? No. Okay? No, it is not. And the reason is, I view an AI grading instrument no different than Turnitin or any of the other plagiarism checkers, because that's basically what they are, is an AI tool. If you are relying on AI to compose your entire email, your entire response to what a student has submitted, and then you just hit send, you should be fired. You should be fired. You have taken no effort. You didn't even look at that work. Hence, whatever grade that student getting is arbitrary, and that is false. If you are using AI to compose a response, you need to look at the student's work. You need to look at the AI response and make sure that that response is adequate. Now, is it a time saver? Absolutely. Okay? Absolutely. I get it. But a instructor has to treat it like any other assistive tool. You look at it, you make sure it is appropriate, you make what corrections that you need, and you submit it. Now, me personally, I do not use a lot of AI for anything. I absolutely do not use Grammarly. I very rarely even use word prediction on my phone. I usually type out my words, which is why spelling errors, because I don't auto-predict what's coming next by just tapping the next word. So, in general, it's a tool. Use the tool appropriately. Double check what's coming out from the product of that tool. And if you're doing that, I don't have an issue. One, because of the fact that instructors are under just insane pressure right now. There is such a lack of people. It's insane to be an instructor. And as the person in charge of an organization that has 3 schools, the one thing I pay really close attention to is what is happening to my instructors. Just this week, I was having conversations with my executive and campus leaderships about teacher loads. Now, I'm not saying every chief executive of every school has those type of conversations. I have those conversations because what I do not want to see is a professor exploding from because of the fact that their load is too great. Like, there needs to be moderation there. A ban on mortuary textbooks that have not been vetted. If you want to up the standards, the current textbooks are inexcusable. There is no vetting, but there should be. What if instead mortuary textbook standards instead force the use of books approved by the medical fields for anatomy and proper sanitation, same for chemistry and cosmetology? My books have left me with nothing. So the first thing is good luck finding anyone in the medical fields that is going to vet books on behalf of another organization for the cheap. It's just not going to happen. So the books that are on the market. First is, what books are you referring to? So if we're looking at like the embalming book, the primary author of that is Sharon G. Mascarello, is a woman with decades and decades and decades of experience teaching. I probably know 70% of the chapter editors of that book, many of which are already published authors in embalming or other textbooks as well. So that book is fairly well vetted. If I look at the other books on the market, you have some by Ralph Clicker, you have some by Larry Cleveland, you have Professional Trade Schools, you have some by Tuesday Evening Publications, you have some by Anubis Publications, you have some by the Funeral Service Education Resource, FCERC, I can't remember what the C stands for. All of these folks are leaders in the field. So the problem is some of these books haven't been re-upped in a while. And this is something we have discussed at the American Board, and the problem becomes we are such a small niche. Think about it. The total amount of new people coming into this profession, or coming into mortuary school, was just over 3,000 students. Do you want to know how many nursing students are in the state of Florida? I'll give you a hint. More than 3,000. Now add up 50 states. There are 3,000 people coming into mortuary science on a national basis. That is crap. That is literally the equivalent of the morning rush at McDonald's, if even that. When you try to do textbook vetting, the problem becomes that is a tedious and expensive process. And an organization like the American Board, there are only 3 paid employees, regularly paid employees at the American Board: the executive director, the associate director, and the office manager. And I believe the office manager at the American Board is part-time. So everyone else in that organization is a volunteer. Now, there is other compensation for individuals in that organization, like site team leaders and stuff like that. But that is not promised. That's not they get a weekly paycheck. If they don't do a site visit, they don't get paid. Okay, this is the men's soccer contract. If you don't do the work, you don't play the game, you're not getting paid for it. But the only salaried people, there's only 3 in the entirety of the American board. Everything that I do for the American board, free. It costs the institutions that I'm a member of money for me to participate. So when I was going, before I became the president of Dallas Institute, Miami-Dade paid for my conventions. They paid my travel. Now, Pierce Colleges pays for that. I make literally nothing for the time that I put in the American board, and that is every person in the American board, whether it's a committee chair, etc. We make nothing. It is impossible. It is impossible for the American board to vet textbooks. The American board makes some profit on textbooks, absolutely. And with the profit on the textbooks it is making, it could probably pay for one employee to try to vet every person who's writing a textbook, several hundred pages each. That salary's not even going to be close to competitive. And I've seen, you don't really have an appreciation, folks. You really don't have an appreciation for how an organization like the American Board runs until you've been a part of it and you look to see what the program committee does and what we have to deal with when scheduling hotels. When we just had our annual meeting in Boston, okay, we had our annual meeting in Boston, and the hotel that we got a very competitive rate. And when a hotel agrees to bring you in at a competitive rate, it's because you are going to give them some other things on the other side, like minimums on food, for catering, etc. There were some hotels that wanted a minimum $55,000 food payment in addition to whatever we were going to pay for the rooms. The costs for these things are insane. So the issue becomes, as a steward of the funds of the American board, that yeah, we have a little bit of a profit now, and we're building up a nice little bit of a war chest. All it takes is about 6 years, and we will literally blow through every surplus dollar in the budget because of the way hotels are going up in prices, just to have our annual conventions. If we try to, if we take that in a different way, okay, if we take it in another direction and we say, okay, that money is there. Well, if that money is there and we can eat some of these costs, that means we don't have to raise prices on reaccreditation fees for the programs themselves, because the schools are under budgets. So as the expenses go up, we are not asking the schools to pay that. We're using these additional revenue streams to cover this increase in cost. So what might be good now might not be good in 5 or 6 years. And when I first started the American board, they were not in the best financial straits. We are in an exactly opposite situation now. So when you get into something like the National Funeral Directors Association, CANA, NFDMA, ICCFA, and they're having these conventions and leadership retreats, I cannot imagine the amount of money they're getting hit with these hotels and whatnot. It's probably just crazy. So the moral of the story is vetting textbooks, extremely difficult. And the other problem is when you involve people outside of our field, you're asking a doctor what they think is important for you to know. That doctor is not a funeral director. And if they want to get down to cellular transport of necessary compounds, that goes into the book because the doctor thinks that's very important. We don't need to know about that. We don't need to know about that. This is why the system that is set up right now is really the best it's going to get. Is it imperfect? It absolutely is imperfect. Hopefully there are ways it gets better. But this is something, textbooks, how they're used for examination purposes, etc. This is something that is very much at the forefront of what we discuss every year at the American Board and try to work out plans to. Bans on allowing AI proctoring systems to be the sole determiner if the student has cheated. Mandate that a human faculty member must review the flagged footage before allegations. Again, we're going back to what is the role of an AI tool in the process. And I cannot tell you how many friggin' times I have been in one of these trainings on how to use AI. And how many times a faculty member is told, you actually have to look to make sure what is going on here. And then what does the faculty member do? Oh, 78% chance you cheated. Have a nice life. I can probably state with reasonable certainty that whoever is doing this has already been told, has already been trained, that you cannot just look at what the proctor is saying and just running with it. Go watch the video. And I can tell you that I have watched lots of friggin' video. And sometimes it is very hard to call people on their BS when they are cheating. Okay? And I've had the exact opposite, where I'm literally watching the video. And I can hear them flipping through the book. I can hear them flipping pages. I am old, but I am not quite that deaf yet. No, that's not what you're hearing. Well, pray tell, what the hell am I hearing? Because it sure as hell doesn't sound like a Vitamix making a smoothie. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy the stuff that I see on the recordings. So, again, what needs to happen is the instructor has to be disciplined to do their job. And one of the things I can tell you that I'm very concerned with, and why we are continually looking at new vendors for things like AI proctoring, is instructors do not have the time to look at 30 students when an AI is flagging all of them at an 80% likelihood of cheating. And I'm not saying that we have classes where every student in the class is getting hit, but when you have a full-time faculty member that is teaching a load of 5 or 6 classes, they offer an examination. Every one of those classes has 20 to 30 people in it. Chances are pretty good at least 2 to 5 people in every class are going to be flagged by the AI. Now, different AI tools offer better things. So, for instance, some tools will offer a red zone where they think the offense has occurred, and you can just go right there and you can watch that little snippet. Some do not. Some offer speedy playback up to 5 times, 10 times. So you can fly through the entire video quicker. Some do not. Generally speaking, speaking for myself, if I'm accusing you of cheating, I have damn well watched that video, and you are damn well cheating. No ifs, ands, or buts. I am calling you on it. And if you did not cheat, you are acting in such a manner that I think any reasonable person watching this video would infer that you are cheating. And this is why when we tell you folks, hey, no hats. I should be present. So right now I am looking at my chat right in the center of the screen. Okay, I'm looking at the chat right in the center of the screen. And now I am reading down, and I'm reading up, and I am reading down. And you can probably see with my eyes that I am focused on something in front of me. So I don't want to hear this bullshit that you aren't cheating when I see this. What in God's green earth is going on your keyboard? Seriously. No, Professor, I'm not cheating. Then what do you have in front of you that is dragging your attention? Oh, I had my phone. Why do you have your phone in front of you? That is a violation of the student handbook. You cannot have devices in front of you. So you are cheating. I mean, dude, it's nuts. It is nuts. Training mandate on how to handle bodies in a wide array of positions, similar to what EMTs receive in order to prevent people from injuring themselves. So the fun part is, how much friggin' money do EMTs get for their programs? A dummy costs thousands of dollars. EMTs can apply for grants. Those programs can get all sorts of cash from Allied Health. No, we get jack squat. There's only $20,000 in any one given year that can be eligible for grant money for every program in the United States of mortuary science. 20 grand. You know what that buys in an EMT program? Like 2.5 dummies. Okay, 2.5 dummies. And a fully articulated dummy is about 10 grand. Okay, it's 10 grand. And I know that because I was looking up trying to get one of those. And the way you learn this is on the job. Ultimately, the way you do this is on the job. Period. It is on the job. Why do you think we don't have EMT gurneys? Because those gurneys are like $7,000 to $12,000, man. In a Furno 101, that's like probably $2,500 these days without the bed, without the cover, without the seat belts. Money's not made on trees. And again, I knew this at the public school level, but now in my position as an executive running 3 schools, running a school is expensive. It's stupidly expensive. This is why it is, you're going to see a lot of schools closing, and you see so many schools consolidating. There was one school recently, a Christian college, I think somewhere in the Midwest, northern Midwest. They literally just closed overnight. They just sent out an email and said, yeah, by the way, we're ceasing operations. We're done. That's ridiculous. That is what we are coming to because it is so expensive these days. So getting things like EMTs, sure. Do you want to spend $78,000 on a mortuary education? Have people come at me and say, hey, you are 3-4 times the amount of my community college at one of the Pierce colleges. Yeah, I am. You want to know why? Because the state doesn't subsidize us. Miami-Dade, the graduates of Miami-Dade, you're Florida residents. If you didn't take loans, you paid out of pocket or just used grants. Your tuition was what, like $1,500, $1,600? Let's not talk about the lab fee. I know about the lab fee, okay? Lab fee was stupid for embalming lab. I get it. But, it was between probably $1,100 and $1,700. And if you're there for, 2 years, let's just round up to $2,000, $6,000 per year. It's a $12,000 degree. So how can a single-purpose mortuary school charge $40,000 to $60,000? Well, it's simple. Your degree at Miami-Dade wasn't $12,000. That's all you paid for it. Ask any international student who went to Miami-Dade. They did not pay $12,000 for a funeral service degree. They paid closer to $40,000 because the state does not subsidize them. They pay out-of-state tuition. So where you paid $112 to $150 per credit hour, they paid $350 per credit hour. It's a $40,000 degree. The state of Florida chooses to subsidize it because you are a Florida resident. So you're not comparing apples to apples. Getting a degree is expensive, especially if you go to a private school. Mandated education, how to use required software such as Microsoft Office 365 or Canvas LMS. The college would have to educate people on how to use them. The colleges already do. I hate that shit when people say, the college doesn't train me how to use the LMS. Bullshit. Student orientation. I promise you, if you go to a college website, there is going to be a section on that college's website on how to use the LMS. If you go into the student organization, it is going to show you or direct you to a place where you can watch videos on how to utilize the LMS. And if people say, you don't do that at Pierce colleges, we absolutely do. There's a student organization you are placed in, and we show you where that is during student orientation. And why don't you know where it is? Because you weren't paying attention during student orientation. I have friends at schools throughout the entire United States. I'm going to pick one at random. And this place I used to teach, Vincennes University in Indiana. They have a distance ed page. You know what's on that? Links to how to use Blackboard Ultra. You know what happens when you log in as a student? It takes you to a home page where there is a link to take you to where the tutorials are and how to use it. Now, make it mandated. Oh, absolutely. But then what happens? All the whiny children come out of the woodwork because I can't access my class because I didn't do the training on time. You're in a perennial catch-22. You're in a perennial catch-22. And I got to be honest. If someone says, teach me how to use Microsoft 365, you got to be effing kidding me, right? Do you not live in 2024? How have you not used an Office product at all? Like, you're joking. That's crazy to me. You know what a lot of schools also have? Free weekend learning or low cost adult learning, how to use Office 365. You know what people think I'm smart. People think I'm a genius. And if they don't, they should, right? You know where I learned all my crap? YouTube. I used YouTube to figure out how to install a backup camera and a radio in my Prius. I used YouTube to figure out basic education on search engine optimization. Gave me a primer. I use YouTube on how to figure out how to use and create Excel formulas. I'm all for mandating. Okay, I'm all for mandating, saying, hey, you have to do something. But that means you have to get it done on time, and if you don't get it done on time, then don't be surprised when I don't let you proceed to the next step. Period. Like, that's a thing. And I can tell you a lot of time is lost. A lot of time is lost in education because educators are catering to a lowest common denominator. So you're starting to see some schools pushing back on this, folks, where, hey, if you didn't do what you're supposed to, you did not meet the price of entry. You can't come in. Do it. Okay? Mandatory disclosure of to-date syllabi and full cost, including all fees and all online learning materials that would be required. That's already a requirement. So the first thing is, that doesn't go on a syllabi. Okay? A syllabus does not tell you what the fees are. A syllabus tells you the ground rules for the course, the grading policies, the stuff like that. But the disclosures on disclosing all fees, that's a requirement of the federal government. Every school has something like that. Every school has something that is giving you a close estimate of what you're going to be paying. Can they be hard to find? Absolutely. Okay, absolutely. Promise you they are. But I can think of, I know all three of my peer schools have a page that tells you what the cost of your education is going to be. And when you come to a Pierce college, we go over what that cost is going to be. That's part of your admissions document. You sign off that you understand this is how much this education is going to cost. And we also show how much is going to come potentially from what you've put in for your financial aid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you know exactly what's coming out of your pocket. Now, for an exact dollar amount, this isn't a car sale. Okay? It is going to be very hard to give you an exact dollar amount. And I have people like, well, I need to know. I have literally heard people ask my staff, well, how much is it going to cost for me to rent an apartment? Like, after I rent the apartment, food expense, etc. Bro, there's something called life. We do not tell you how to compute life. Like, we're not going to say we're going to budget in for 3 days a week for the next 2 years your morning coffee at Dunkin'. Like, you have to figure some of these things out on yourself, and we try to give you some reasonable estimates. And we do have rough ideas of what rents are going to cost, say, within the Dallas or Jeffersonville, Louisville area, etc. We can give you some guidance as to this is how much you should estimate for living expenses. But schools are required to give you, for the most part, that type of cost. Public schools may be under some sort of different sort of thing. And if I look back and I think about my Miami-Dade website, I don't think from the funeral service website we covered cost that much. But we did tell you roughly how much the education was going to be because I'm the guy that wrote the FAQ page. And I know damn well that I stated on that page and on presentations and student orientations and open houses that the cost is roughly anywhere between $12,000 to $15,000 plus living expenses for in-state students and 3 times that for out-of-state and international, plus living expenses. So if your school is not doing that, that's something you need to take up with the school or report the school to an accreditor because the information is there. It should be there. Mandatory observation of cremations and identification viewings. You'd be surprised that most state laws require that unless the family waives it. And what you find conveniently in a bunch of stuff that the family signs at time of arrangements is that waiver indeed. So I can tell you that Mike Nicodemus is one of the foremost trainers of cremation in the United States. I believe now he is teaching through, or he's offering continuing ed through the National Funeral Directors Association. Mike has said for years, every family, every time, they ID their person. No ifs, ands, or buts. That you literally eliminate the liability of cremating the wrong body when they do a visual identification. Not their agent, not someone else, them, a person who knows that person. You should not be having a photo and walking back and checking for them. They should not be delegating it to their attorney if the attorney has never met them. Someone who knows that deceased needs to do that. And I know that because I went through a training with Mike Nicodemus. And now I have heard Paul Masters. He teaches through ICCFA. I've heard Paul encourage that, but not outright say this is the only thing that you should do, because that is not the modern landscape. Me personally, if I was running a funeral home, you would have to waive out. That would be included in the cost of what I do, is you would need to perform an identification for all methods of disposition. So if it's a direct disposition, such as direct cremation or immediate burial, you will ID the body before I put it in the box. Like, I need to know that that's that person. And what am I going to do? I'm going to build that into my basic service as a funeral director and staff. So if I am going to ID view all of these people, that I'm going to put in the extra $50 per person, because they say, oh my God, an ID view is $300. Bro, seriously? Normal business hours, you're already open. What are you in? You're already paying the employee to be there. Do not try to tell me that disc spray or some other topical disinfectant like disc spray is $700 a case. It's not. So your spray, no big deal. Water, okay, you're using some water. You need to figure out how much water you waste on a typical bathe and disinfect. Laundry. You can either use paper towels or you could launder your own. You can figure out pretty quickly what the estimate is for what it's going to cost you to do an ID view, built in every single time. I'm telling you, it's probably around $50, and you're still making a couple of dollars on top of that. They want to do something outside of normal operational hours? Oh yeah, now you charge them a premium. So I'm not saying don't charge your $395s, okay? I am saying that it does not cost you $395 when you run the math. So figure out what that is and ask yourself, is me adding that and potentially losing a couple of calls per year appropriate for my business model versus the risk of when something bad happens and I have to worry about my insurance premium going through the roof and pay a settlement? That is the question you have to ask. Half of all materials must be non-multiple choice assignments. Yeah, good luck getting that one. Not while there's a board exam, man. This would force more essay-style questions and more thought to be put into place by students. And there's a direct correlation between people explaining themselves and not getting multiple chance questions right. Currently, all one has to be good at is memorizing without thinking anything through and only repeating information back. Pure rote, no thought. Which makes you wonder why people are failing a national board exam where it's all rote and no thought. To truly elevate the education level, showing complex, well-developed thought that have to be graded by an instructor who must give feedback without A&I enables development. You're losing me on that one. So the problem is that there's a fundamental misunderstanding of how that works, of how education works here. Multiple choice has its purpose. Multiple choice is a Phillips head screwdriver. Can you use a Phillips head on every screw? No, you cannot. Can you use a flathead on every screw? No, you cannot. You have to have the right tool for the right job. In fact, really fun thing I got over here. Had it. Oh, that's my name. That hurt. That sucks. Ow. That's some trash. Educational blueprints. I know the what do you call it? The camera is mirrored. So the issue is, you have to ask yourself, what is it that I want to do here? Okay? Multiple choice, true and false, have a place. And that place is basic knowledge. Basic knowledge. When I ask an essay question is useless if I do not have basic knowledge. And if you're using an essay question to test basic knowledge, it's the wrong thing. An essay question tests a more complex use of the information. So you have to use the proper assessment tool for the appropriate method. This is why when you say something, when you have a course learning outcome, and you say analyze, you cannot analyze with a multiple choice question. Analyze has to be a short answer or an essay response. That's how you analyze something. Differentiate. I can possibly differentiate with a multiple choice or multiple answer question. I really can't differentiate with a true and false question. I could differentiate with maybe a matching question. Identify. An essay question is not going to help me identify anything. A multiple choice, a matching, that'll help me identify. This goes back to something called Bloom's taxonomy. And that's what this little thing does. What do I want to do? I want to evaluate. So it gives me outcome verbs. It gives me assessment questions. It gives me instructional strategies, all based on something called Bloom's taxonomy. So the problem is, when you go in to take a board exam, you're not being asked essay questions. You're not being asked true and false questions. You're being asked multiple choice questions. A very heavy emphasis needs to be made on multiple choice questions while you're in mortuary school. And if your mortuary school is not doing that, your mortuary school is doing you a disservice. Period. It is. Because that is part of the test-taking strategy, to get you accustomed to answering multiple choice questions. So when you go into the Pearson VUE testing environment, when you go into this new area where you're already freaking out because of all the information you've had to study and realizing this is the test that determines whether or not you get to move on with your life or not, that when you sit down and you see a multiple choice question, that you are already trained and comfortable with multiple choice questions. And I promise you, if I want to fail your ass with multiple choice questions, I will happily fail your ass with multiple choice questions. I can make your multiple choice questions so hard and so miserable that you will hate me to hell and back for it. So it matters the type of multiple choice questions that you use. And this is why it is important that if you are an instructor, and I have said it on this channel, you need to put in your name every year for the item writing workshop offered by the International Conference of Funeral Service Examining Boards and learn to write assessment questions for the board exam. Because when you learn to do that, you can bring that back into your classroom. You are learning good techniques on how to phrase questions and how to use good discriminators in your questions so that your students are being trained to be able to differentiate the distractors from the key. And that is not what happens. And the reason for that is simple. People are desperate to hire professors because they need professors. So what do? They go to a funeral home and they find someone with a bachelor's degree. They bring that person into their school and they get them to teach a course. Maybe if they're lucky, they get a little bit of onboarding and some training, but more often than not, they go through faculty orientation, and now they're in a class. And they say, hey, you need to write some multiple choice questions. You know what the difference between the multiple choice question a student writes and a professor writes that's their first semester teaching? Not a damn thing, because they have no idea what the hell they're doing. You know how I know that? Because I have an assignment in a course that I used to teach where you had to write those questions. You know what I've noticed between them and the first-timers that are writing questions? Zero difference. The questions I wrote in 2012 and the questions I wrote in 2022 are completely different. And I can tell you, and people have been through my classes and have probably slammed my ass in WhatsApps, chats, slammed my ass in DMs on Facebook Messenger. My questions suck. And why? Because they're hard. My questions, multiple choice, rote memorization, are hard. And they're exactly like what you're going to run into on a national board exam, not because they're the same question, but because I have written them to the same level of intensity. Plain and simple. So not all questions are alike. Currently, student may be able to go through a college and only be assessed period of multiple choice questions when given a weekly discussion post, be graded by an AI, and never given any feedback from a human. Yeah, and schools are doing that more and more simply because of the fact that they're trying to save money, right? If they can have one professor teaching 9 classes and having AI do the majority of grading, of course they're saving money. I had a discussion with the professor today. They don't even have at their school a classroom dedicated to funeral service. Anything they bring into their classroom that they are using for their class, they have to take out when the class is concluded, because some other discipline is going to come into that classroom, and they don't need to be looking at caskets or urns or anything like that. That may freak them out. That blows my mind. You have a funeral service program, but no dedicated classroom. No place to show merchandise unless it's your own faculty's office. That's nuts to me. That is mind-blowingly lame. Like, super lame. And that concerns me. If that's the way education is going, I am very, very, very scared. You go to any one of the Pierce colleges, you go to CCMS, you go to AAMI, you go to Warsham, you go to PIMS, you go to Commonwealth. One thing we all have, absolutely, is we have room with merchandise in it. We want you to see it. We want you to be able to talk about it. Because the best... And why? Because when you go into the damn arrangement room at a funeral home, you should be able to look at merchandise on the wall and use it if merchandise is there. Well, now what is happening? People are taking all the damn merchandise out of the funeral homes and doing it all on computer. And I'm telling you, that's absolute bullshit too. You cannot impress value on people with something on a screen. Oh, it's got a bright screen. That's crap until I actually see how bright the screen is. And this is why I guess I was such a good salesman when I was at a funeral home. And people have accused me of being like super predatory when working with my families. No, absolutely not. I'm a good salesman. I don't need to be predatory. The techniques that I use are there to give the family the knowledge they need to make a good decision. And the first thing I did, the absolute first thing I did, when someone said, oh my, that's a beautiful urn, my ass is out of the chair, it's grabbing the urn, and it's putting him right in front of them, right in their hands, so they can see it. I want you to touch it. I want you to see it. I want you to see how heavy it is. That establishes value. Looking at something on the screen that's $600, that's hard to establish value. So how do you establish value? You slap a Coach logo on it? A YSL? What do you put on it to establish value? It's hard. It's hard. But when you put it in their hands and they touch it and they feel it, completely different story. I've been looking at getting something like a Steam Deck for probably 3 years. Why did I choose the Asus Ally? Because it was cheap. Literally, it was cheap. And when I chose to buy it, I chose to buy it at a Best Buy. Why? Because if it's trash, I'm going to bring its ass back. I sat down with it, played with it for 5 or 10 minutes. This is the device that is going to suit my needs. Period. This checks a lot of boxes. Am I going to take it on every business trip? Probably not. Am I going to take it on vacation? You bet your ass I am, because I'm not taking my laptop. And with this, I can do anything I can do on Windows. Then later on, if I want to do online gaming, simple. It's a gaming computer, man. It's a handheld, literal gaming computer. I can plug it into the dock, and I can run just about anything I damn well want to play. I don't even need to bring my Xbox in here because I can use Xbox Cloud Gaming. It checks all of my boxes for what I need. But until I had it in my hand, you know what I thought? Man, $385 is a lot of money, even though it's like $300 cheaper than its MSRP. But once I had it in my hand and I played with it and it checked all my boxes, it's worth $385. It is absolutely worth $385 for me. Lee, I know in our funeral home, a family forgoes the right to ID themselves. A reason has to be listed as to why. It always worries me doing an ID myself. It happens most of time for our commission. Yeah. And people seem to... This is something I've said for years. It's a very unpopular stance. I do not believe you need to do anything to ID a human body. You don't have to bathe them. You don't have to pose their features. You don't have to do squat. We at funeral homes, we have taken that upon ourselves. This is why we charge $395, right? Because when we say an ID view, and what I tell you, it is not cheap, or it is cheap to actually do this for a client family. It is super cheap. If you do it during normal business hours, using some water, using some laundry, some soap, some spray. Eye caps and whatnot. Eye caps are not that expensive. You're super damn cheap. Don't even need to use eye caps. Just use cotton, right? Just use some bulk cotton. That's $11 a roll. How many eyes can you close with one of those big rolls of bulk cotton? Like, come on, man. You can probably do several hundred calls with one roll of bulk cotton closing eyeballs. So we're not looking at a lot of money here. But an ID is an ID. You go to the medical examiner's office, you go to the police station, you go to the coroner, you go anywhere else. You go to the hospital, do an ID. What are you looking at? What you see is what you get, baby. They're doing no prep. It is perfectly acceptable to offer that and then offer what we know in the funeral service as an identification viewing. We have taken that higher standard as the minimum price of entry. Nothing says you can't just do an ID view like everyone else does it. Walk them up, pull the blinds, flap, done. Oh my God, that's so hard. Then why do the cops do it? Why do the medical examiners do it? Well, my coroner gives us about 5 or 6 minutes to, okay, give him 5 or 6 minutes, yo. Cool. What is that 5 or 6 minutes worth? To me, 5 or 6 minutes, that's not worth a hassle of putting a price on it. It's really not. And nothing says that you can't build that into your business model. Okay, nothing says you can't build that into your business model. You prepared us professionally and with integrity? Meh, I like to think I did. I prepared you with profanity and integrity, that's for sure. I always used to love doing that. The first time I said shit in a classroom or something, everyone just kind of perks up and is like, huh, what did you just say? It's like, yeah, welcome to reality. And I told you folks, everything I do is very intentional. Everything I do is very intentional. The first time they hear that profanity, it stops you from looking at your phone. Did I just hear that dude right? Yeah, you just did. It's amazing how one piece of profanity here will wake up an entire classroom until they get to know you. Then by the time you've taken your third or fourth class with me, you just expect it. Like, you just know it's going to happen and it loses the effect. But for that first class, that makes all the difference in the world. If I see you getting lost, okay, it's time for me to go ahead and do something to shake up the norm. I've been like, dude, my phone's been like buzzing because I put on something like, dude, who the hell is calling me? Like, I have no friends in Texas. Leave me alone. So, Linkshade, there are my responses to you. If I came across a bit bitter or pissy about it, my apologies. Not directed towards you. It's just that a lot of this stuff is the stuff I see all the time. People say these things like, dude, I know that stuff is there. And I get this from the student perspective. And this is what really frustrated me as an instructor and frustrates me now as an educational executive. I know the stuff is there. I know the stuff is there. And I know where we talk about it. So one of the things that I do, and I don't really have to, but I do it anyways, is I attend student orientations. Like if I get invited by my dean or by the college president to attend a student orientation as the chief executive, I will attend. Okay, I will attend. And I will listen to see what my dean is saying. And sometimes I'll just tell them, hey, send me the link right now. I'm going to listen in. Why? Because I want to know what you're telling the students. I like being undercover boss, or rather pop-up boss, because it's like, okay, what are you doing? What are you saying? So when a student comes and says, oh, you know, my professor didn't tell me that, I can literally look a student in the face and go, bullshit, they didn't. I was in that meeting. Yeah, that didn't happen. And that's the fun part, is I'm not accusing someone of lying. I'm just telling you that didn't happen. What you're stating did not happen. Maybe you perceived it that way, but that's not what happened. People usually are very caught by that. They're caught off guard. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why I do that. One, when I do it only when I am certain. But two, you don't get to have that type of control. Okay? When someone comes in on the offensive like that, they want to be in charge. You don't get to be in charge right now. Okay? You don't get to be in charge when you're making false statements. So you're not lying, but your perception is off. This is what actually happens. This is what actually happened. This is the evidence that I have. Well, I don't see it that way. I'm sorry you don't, but that's the reality. Okay? People don't like me as a customer service manager. And on that same thing, you go, man, you're a hard ass with people. You really don't want to be my staff doing something wrong. Like when a student comes to me with a concern, I'm going to investigate. The one thing I don't do is promise anything when it comes across my desk. I talk to everyone first. I figure out exactly what happened, where the miscommunication is, and then I'll try to mediate. And that is a very important thing that I think a lot of you folks have lost right now, is you want to jump deep into it. You want to run with whatever's out there. And that's a very bad thing. A great example of this is President Biden has COVID right now. Okay? So there's two schools of thought that can come out of this. The first is you have an 80-year-old guy that's got COVID, and that's generally not a good thing for 80-year-old people, whether you're the President of the United States or some dude living in a group home. You really don't want to have COVID in your 80s. The second thing is that's the excuse to get out of the debate. If he has COVID, he can't talk, right? What's a symptom of COVID? Brain fog. So what's the problem? If he's got COVID, that jeopardizes his ability being the commander-in-chief and making sound decisions. That's just the truth of a matter. You can't get a disease that messes with your head. So what do they say? Oh, he's got light symptoms. Oh. And the press booth has never been known to exaggerate, lie, or misdirect. So it creates issues. So what do you want to do first? Find some proof he's got COVID before you talk about it. So I'm not saying he doesn't have COVID. I'm not saying it's an excuse to get him out of the debate. But what I'm saying is I am concerned as a U.S. citizen that the guy's got COVID, especially right now. And what environments is he being put in where he may be getting exposed to COVID before an election year? Like, I literally do not want the President of the United States to die on the campaign trail. Like, that would be horrible for his family and for the country. Let's see. Can you shout me out? Shout you out for what, Kate and Daniel? Lee, hey Finn, can I ask you your opinion about a situation of mine pertaining to the internship? I've called off messages and emailed the board multiple times and have heard nothing. I would act shocked, but yeah, if you want to send in an email, you can do that. If you want to discuss it right now, I can give you my opinion on it if it's nothing like crazy. Feel free to drop it in the chat. I mean, I still get questions from people in Florida about the laws and rules exam and stuff like that, so I'm always willing to chime in what I can, but whatever I say is, again, all views are my own, does not necessarily reflect Pierce Mortuary College's, my dog, or any of my dogs, etc. So, I've had a name change, included the info of my name change in the application, included a certified copy of my name change. Okay, so far legit. What are they trying to say, that they're not going to honor the name change or something? Problems when I got my digital fingerprints done, it was when I had my previous name. I don't know if that will cause a hiccup. It should go through. It should go through. I can't really see them. I can't really see them losing their mind. This is why you have to have an identifier like a social security number or something. So when you submit evidence of your name change, and it's going to match your social and all that, they know it is you. Like, this is why on my dad's death certificate I have like 3 different names. I've got the name that's the majority of the documents, and then I've got the name that appeared when he was in the service, and then I got the name that he went by in Italian. So that way it's just covered. Yeah, I don't think you'll need to spend $50 on a retake. I mean, I really don't think you will. As long as they were, within, I think the 2-year limit is the time frame on that stuff. That it shouldn't be an issue. Like it shouldn't. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the board. They're probably losing their minds. Dr. Evely, hallelujah. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the presence of greatness. Dr. Mark Evely is with us this evening. Mark, how you doing, brother? Nice to see you again today. Folks, a shout out to Dr. Evely. He is the program director at Wayne State University. And Mark, I forget what your official title is. You're a dean of something there, I think, dean and chair. Dr. Evely is the newly appointed, or newly elected, because he was elected by his peers, newly elected chair of the Committee on Accreditation at the American Board of Funeral Service Education. He's a friend of mine. I would like to say he is a close and dear friend of mine. And man, thanks for taking the time to hang out. And wonderful question, calling my ass out. Should the ABFSC accredit funeral director only programs? I do not have reservations. Against accrediting funeral director only programs. And the reason for this is because we are seeing more, partly because of stuff that happened that we were looking at with the New Jersey law earlier in the live stream today, is they're still referencing graduation from an ABFSC accredited program. And one of the things, and Mark, if you're jumping in late, one of the things in the New Jersey law that I'm concerned with is the testing requirement for the funeral director only, the funeral arranger, requires an examination that also has questions on human preservation. Like, if you're going to have a funeral director only, you want them to know that sort of stuff. Like, are you setting the stage to have an associate in arts and funeral directing minus embalming labs, but with the embalming lectures? Like, that's just the associate of science. That's the Diet Coke associate in sciences degree. I mean, what's going on there? So from that standpoint, I think it's probably going to be important that the ABFSC or the Committee on Accreditation has some oversight on those. From a hail capitalism standpoint, if the ABFSC accredited institution is offering it, and it's leading to licensure, right? Because that was the thing with the new standard that's coming into effect in 2025, that they're only going to accredit things that lead to licensure. These certificates lead to licensure. So there are some very strong and compelling arguments that we should be looking at that. And if we're going to look at that and we're worried about the manpower, then perhaps there can be some language or something that differentiates when there is a certificate that does not include exactly the same courses that are included in the Associate in Sciences degree, right? So if you have, let's take, for example, Miami-Dade College, not Florida State and not St. Petersburg College in Florida. Miami-Dade has a college credit certificate. Florida State College at Jacksonville and St. Petersburg College have an advanced technical certificate in funeral service education or funeral director only, whatever. Why is that a big difference? All the classes in a college credit certificate must be transferable to an associate's degree. Every class you take in that certificate needs to be a class in that associate's degree. So if the American board is coming in, looking at the institution, looking at that associate in sciences program, looking at those classes to ensure compliance with the different fields, etc., I don't feel that they need to do that over for a certificate of that nature if all of the courses, with the exception of like a capstone course, because clearly there's probably going to be a capstone course that is different than what might be offered in the associate in sciences. And that's the way it became at Miami-Dade, but that is not the way it started. So at Miami-Dade, the capstone course was basically a 1 and a 2. And for the associate in sciences folks, you took the first. If you passed the first, half semester course, then you continued on to the second. When we went to the associate in sciences plus the funeral director certificate, what was happening is I didn't want them to be able to finish their certificate and then take that portion back to the associate in sciences and say, well, I've already done that, so now you just need to test me on the sciences. Had I known the conference was going to go the way that it did, and now, it's either National Board Exam Arts or National Board Exam Sciences, I wouldn't have given a damn and I just would have let it happen. But what I did is I stopped teaching the A course, right, the A and the B. And I created 2 separate courses. One that covers arts and sciences with a different number, and one that was the B course that we used prior, that was just the arts. So if that student went from the college credit certificate to the associate in sciences degree, they would have to repeat the capstone and pass all the subject matter examinations accordingly to show they still had mastery of that subject matter information. That was also at the time where they were taking the Florida State Board exam, and it was not an equivalent to the National Board Exam Arts. So now there could be some discussion on that. Now St. Pete and Florida State, the Advanced Technical Certificate is intended to be used in cases where a student has a pre-existing undergraduate degree, associate, bachelor's, whatever, and the certificate is intended to give further specific and individualized instruction to improve their skill set in that area. I'm not saying that that is the right degree they should be using. That is simply the way it got approved through the state. So if a student goes into their ATC programs, do those classes transfer into their associate in sciences, the accredited program? Absolutely. Okay, absolutely. But do they have to? No, they do not. Because an ATC is intended to be something different. So what you would do is you would get, your AS degree in aviation mechanics, and then you have a college credit, or you have an advanced technical certificate in engine design and maintenance. And those courses in that certificate build upon the fundamentals of engine design and construction and maintenance that you'll learn in the AS degree. Think of it kind of like a post-licensing course. In Florida, you take a 60-hour pre-licensed real estate course for the ability to obtain licensure as a licensed real estate salesperson. Once you finish and pass your Florida real estate exam, now you have to take a 20-hour post-licensing course where you go over the same crap that you already did in just more detail so that the state can steal more money from you. So I'm not bitter about having to take that course, but that's also why I don't let my my real estate license lapse, because I don't want to go through that hell that was the Florida real estate exam again. That's kind of how that works. So like a post-licensing course. Those courses should be changed to a college credit certificate. I also think there's some financial aid ramifications for them. A college credit certificate is not eligible for federal financial aid. So you have to pay for that out of pocket. which I think is also limiting. An ATC, I don't know if I don't think the ATCs are eligible for financial aid either. So unless you're doing the associate in sciences working towards a degree, you're simply not using federal financial aid for that. But that would be my stance on it, is I think there's an easy way to do it, whether that's going to be acceptable to organizations that accredit us. You know, are they going to kind of share that mentality that, hey, this is the path of least resistance and this makes the most sense when you involve the federal government, Department of Education? Typically, if it's going to involve common sense, you're going to find out they have allergies to that. You need to keep a couple EpiPens handy so when that common sense hits that, you know, they don't choke on their own tongue. All right, folks. Any last questions? I'm not even going to open my emails, see if any emails came in at this point. This has been a good 2.5 hours. This was fun tonight. And this is probably one of the largest views that I've gotten for a live stream. So thank all you folks for taking the time to jump on out. In regard to those other endeavors like gaming, live streaming, and whatnot, probably talk about that next month in August. Don't know if we'll have a live stream in September. Maybe we'll, and then maybe I'll try to stream something from the booth there at NFDA in Louisiana. Again, folks, CANA coming up. What were my notes on that? CANA September 11th to September 13th in Chicago. NFDA is in October 20th to the 23rd. And National Funeral Directors and Morticians Association is right around the corner. I think 2 weeks, August 3 to 7th, there in Maryland. If you are a student, I strongly encourage you to reach out to these organizations, see if you can get a day pass or if they have scholarships for registration fees. I know NFDA does for sure. NFDMA probably has something similar. You really want to get involved now. Get involved. Be used to being involved, and that makes you a much better practitioner. So when things like discussions of board exams or legal changes come in, you have knowledge, you are armed with knowledge, and you are more effective in your capacity as a citizen and as a licensee in talking about these things. Lee, have a good night. Thanks for coming by. Good to hear from you. Maybe we'll catch you when I start the gaming night up, right? Dr. Reevely, always a pleasure, my friend, to see you. Hope you are well. And the rest of you folks out. Kate and Daniel bros, hey, thanks for stopping by. I think this was your first time. Monica, nice to hear you again, kiddo. Keep posting your stuff on Facebook. Trinity, nice to see you as well. There was someone else here. Who was it? Gathered Confessions. There you are. You're the other one that I missed. I think that sums up everyone that popped in. Nope. Angela, Merlina. Almost forgot you two. Man, there was a lot in the chat tonight. What's going on there? All right, y'all. Everyone have a good night. I will see you on the next time. Y'all take care of yourselves. God bless.